Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, we appreciate your joining us today for a new episode of The Rope That Binds Us, ahlusunnah waljama'aah. We're still talking about the principles and the rules that the ahlusunnah waljama'aah, the people of sunnah who follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, set for us to understand and to deal with the textual evidence. And today's rule is the first rule we're going to talk about today, that Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah don't accept the individual opinion of one of the righteous predecessors, or the Salaf Salih, or the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, or the Tabi'een, if it contradicts with Al-Quran or Sunnah or the opinion of the majority of the Muslim scholars in that time. What do we mean by that? We don't ever take anybody's opinion or his statement over what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. No matter how great that scholar is, even if he is the greatest scholars among Muslims from the Sahaba. And we remember what we mentioned before, that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu ardah once told his students that Allah might punish you with a storm. It would come to destroy all of you, because when I tell you that Allah or His Messenger said, you reply by saying, or Abu Bakr or Umar said. And sometimes Ibn Abbas would tell them the rule from the Quran and Sunnah, but this rule, maybe it goes against what they heard, that Abu Bakr or Umar issued maybe fatwa and related to this issue, different than what Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu was mentioning. What Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu is trying to establish here, that we should not ever take somebody's opinion over Allah or His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's statement or judgment. Whenever we say that Allah or His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said something, we go with it and we will not leave it for somebody's opinion. So basically we cannot say that the opinion of so-and-so scholar or the opinion of so-and-so sheikh contradict the verse or contradict the Quran, so we will look at them in the same level. No. If it's contradict Al-Quran or Sunnah, what we should do, we should leave it. We should leave it. Because all the scholars said, whenever there is a text from Quran or Sunnah, go against what I said, leave what I said for what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. That's been said by Imam Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad, and Sufyan al-Thawri before that, and other great scholars among the Tabi'een, the Tabi'een, and even among the Sahaba radiallahu anhum arda, among the companions. Also, we should not take one person's opinion and we treat it as if it is a text from Quran and Sunnah. Or if his opinion contradict or go against other scholars or against other companions. And I give you an example. Sometimes people will quote or will narrate some narrations that one of the Sahaba did this or did that. And they will tell you this is the proof. And sometimes what they are saying or this narration go against a clear hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. For instance, we all know that unfortunately there is a fight happened between the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, some of the companions, they fought each other. And we know that Al-Hasan went also in army and he was killed in Iraq. So we know this incident happened. Can somebody use this incident or use this as an evidence that it is allowed to carry arm against other Muslims or fighting other Muslims? No doubt you cannot use these incidents as a proof to allow Muslim to carry arm against other Muslim or to kill other Muslim. Because it's very clear in Quran and Sunnah that we are not allowed to kill one another. We're not allowed to carry arms against Muslims. So you cannot leave what's clear in Quran and Sunnah for some individuals' opinions or actions because they did what they did maybe for reasons we're not aware of it today. For example, somebody tell me that one of the Sahaba, for example, did this and that. But what you saying that he did, we have a text from Quran and Sunnah, go against. Or somebody tell me that some of the tabi'een said very harsh word against, for example, an innovator or somebody who committed sin. So one of the tabi'een, one of the early Muslim generations, one of the scholars, maybe he refuted his bid'ah in a very harsh way. Sometimes maybe a mean way. Somebody to say, okay, I'm following the footsteps of the early Muslim scholars, that's why I'm so harsh against those who committing sins or did bid'ah or innovation. No, ya akhi. Why you leave what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in His book, وَقُولُوا لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا وَقُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Tell people what is good. Treat people with good manners. And Allah ordered Musa and Harun to talk to Pharaoh in a nice way. Why you leave this evidence and take certain individual have said or done something maybe not the best behavior or the best statement they have made in their life. That's not the right way to deal with the narrations which has been narrated about as-Salaf as-Salih or the early Muslim generation. Let's move to the second point. A text should not be understood in the light of the invented definitions, terminologies, or rules placed after the Prophet ﷺ's time. This is also a very important issue. This is very important issue. Because if we judge the words or the terminology that the Prophet ﷺ used based on later on invented terminologies, we will be in a chaos. We will not be able to understand the meaning of the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Give you an example. Sa'ah or an hour. This word an hour in modern days it means 60 minutes. But in the time of the Prophet ﷺ it doesn't mean 60 minutes. So if the Prophet ﷺ said if somebody come in the first hour, then the second hour, then the third hour, yes, some people might think it means the first 60 minutes, the second 60 minutes, the third 60 minutes, and so on. No, this is not the way to understand this text about Salat al-Jumu'ah, whoever come earlier. So you cannot understand the word hour or sa'ah, which is used by the Prophet ﷺ, based on the way we understand this word today, because it has a certain definition in these modern days. Also the word mile, mil, the mile. The Prophet ﷺ made qasr after 13 miles. It's not the mile that we use here with the meters and kilometers. No, it's different. It's a different type of measurement. So we cannot say that whatever terminologies we have today, we apply it to the time of the Prophet ﷺ if it doesn't apply, because they might have another meaning for the words. Also, when the Prophet ﷺ, for example, used the word wajib, which is literally can be translated to obligatory. Nobody can say it means if you do it, you will be rewarded, and if you leave it, you will be, it will be considered as a sin. Consider a sin. This terminology was invented by the modern Muslim jurist, or who came later on after the Prophet ﷺ time. It's different than the meaning of wajib during the Prophet ﷺ time. Like the word makruh, something disliked. In the sense of the Muslim jurist will define makruh or dislike, not recommended. It's something, if you do it, you will not be sinful. And if you leave it, you will not be also, and if you leave it, you will be rewarded for it. You will be rewarded for it. But it's not a sin. But when you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after He mentioned major sins, He said in Surah Al-Isra, كُلُّ ذَلِكَ كَانَ سَيِّئُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ مَكْرُوهًا. All these sins that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned from the major sins, they are all makruh, dislike. So here makruh, it's different than the makruh or the dislike that the fuqaha or the Muslim jurists used after that. It's very important to understand this in order for you to make the right judgment, to drive the right rules from the textual evidence. And there's so many examples can go with that. I think it should be now, inshallah, clear. I think we should move to another point now, and this will be totally a new issue, which is the manifestation of holding into the intangible jama'ah is following the scholars. Since we're talking about the evidence and how to deal with the evidence, no doubt that we talked also about the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and the early Muslim generations. No doubt it's very important for us also to know that part of being together, one of the most element in the society which can bring the community together are the scholars. And whenever the scholars' position became weak in any society, in any community, this community will not be strong, will be divided. And whenever there is scholars who are existing in the ummah, they should bring people together. They should bring people together and add strength to the ummah. That's why in the early time of Islam, there were so many scholars. And we see today there is only few scholars people know. It's very sad. It's very sad that people know a lot of doctors, lawyers, businessmen, that they can go to and consult them whenever they need. But they don't care about knowing scholars that they can turn to, and they can ask, and they can trust, and they can learn from. Even though knowing the scholars and learning under the scholars is a very fundamental issue in Islam, and it should be something every Muslim be worried about and try to practice. I think the first questions that everybody would ask, who is a scholar? How can we define the scholar? The Muslims define the scholars. Scholars define the scholars by saying the scholars come from the word alim. It comes from the word ilm, knowledge. Which knowledge are we talking about here? We're talking about Al-Quran and As-Sunnah. This is the knowledge we're talking about. Not physics, not medicine. So Quran and Sunnah. So the person who is knowledgeable in Quran and Sunnah is the scholar. That means that person, in order for him to understand Al-Quran and Sunnah, he needs to be able to understand Arabic perfectly. He knows the terminology of the science of Quran and Sunnah, fiqh, usul fiqh, the science of hadith. He knows what is abrogated, what's not, what this word means, and he knows in details the information which is related to Al-Quran and Sunnah and any other science which is help and serve the person, help and serve this purpose, which is understanding Al-Quran wa Sunnah. But also they add to it that this person must be a person who, at least his appearance is good. That he appeared to people as a trustworthy person, as a person who is righteous, not fasiq, or not a person who will practice indecent act openly. Unfortunately, we have to stop here. Thank you for joining us today, and inshallah we'll see you in the next episode to continue our discussion about the role of the scholars and how can we benefit from them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.